Hi,
Hey Ross.
how are you?
Good.
Welcome to the desert island.
And you look so good.
Thank you. Yeah, the tan, the shirt, the
Are you
backdrop is
really, are you
beautiful.
really from England? I don't believe it. No.
And how are you? How are you keeping?
Good. Yeah, we're all fine. Very
Good,
good. Thank you. Yeah,
excellent.
doing fine.
So, welcome to the desert island. We may be here for some time, Bernhard. So, I'd love to talk to you maybe about some watches that you managed to pack to bring with you to get us through this
Try to
time
do so.
together on the island. I've got, as ever, my secret recipe coconut drink. Did you manage to bring a drink with you?
Yeah, I captured a drink for my daughter. A
Uh,
little holiday glass with some funky juice. Cheers.
Happy holidays, indeed.
We,
So
we
let's
all
kick,
in the future.
so let's kick things off. Let's
Yeah.
talk about watches. What's the first one that you want to share with us?
Oh yeah, it's a good one. Maybe it's still my grail piece. It is. Interesting thing is, I'll show it you quickly so you can see a little bit.
Oh,
It's
wow.
a it's a 6265 Daytona. Yes, I have a backlight bezel on it, but what I do is I switch styles and stuff all the time. So I switch back and forward between backlight and steel. I enjoy the 6265 often on a strap, but on the Jubilee I wear this one a lot with a backlight because there's a nice contrast in it, and I enjoy watches, sports watches on Jubilees also. And it's for me always a watch that reminds me on the really beginning of when I started collecting. Then there was always the vintage Daytona was always my grail watch back then. And I really, when you think back on those days when I started buying the first vintage Rolex, and then I guess many people have had that rush that you rush from one to another watch, that you rush. Now I want to have a Submariner, then you wanted to try the Sea Dweller and Explorer and all these kind of things because you discovered a whole new world with a lot of stories and knowledge. But always there was at the top of the line for me was at that point was the vintage Daytona. And I still remember, maybe that reflects always that area, which was such a cool community and the trust and friendships amongst each other that you wandered forums like 2 3 hours a day, emails, phone calls with people from all over the world. It opened completely new worlds, which was really, yeah, so much fun back then. And I still remember finally getting my first own vintage Daytona back then in a summer holiday. I was sitting somewhere at the beach in France, no internet connection. I had to go to some kind of bar to get a little bit of internet. Couldn't do nothing, really old modem stuff like that.
Old dial-up style.
Yeah, dial-up style, and yeah, it's that old. I'm that old, yeah. But a good friend Werner from Germany, you also know well. We were looking for Daytonas together. We wanted to do maybe a Daytona after the holiday together. We would buy those one together, and during my holiday, I saw on a little bit of internet that he bought one. And posted it on the forum. Was like, oh, Werner, you didn't wait for me. You already got yours, and he said like, yeah, I know. And I said like, yeah, but you mostly, as I know, you probably will sell it in 3 weeks anyway or in a month. So maybe, then. And he was like, yeah, you're right. You know what? Give me your address and I sent you the watch now. I was like, yeah, but I'm in the middle of France, no internet. I can't pay from here. I can't do nothing. I mean, we never met before. You only had talks on the forums, and he just sent the watch box papers, and that also was for me really like a very magic of that community back then, the trust, the friendships, and also that path that you walk together with all the guys, discovering these new worlds, and a lot of still also back then discovering a lot of new knowledge, new things, details. So it was a really exciting time. So even this watch reminds me every time of these times.
Yeah. Let me
Yeah,
do
and
a screen share. You sent me an amazing pic. You are such an incredible photographer. Here we go. We just look at that watch. It's stunning, isn't it?
yeah, I really love it. And what I really find so interesting of this design, and for me, it was always like the most iconic design with Rolex. It's so balanced. I mean, it's funny when you imagine back then in those days, this was cheaper than a Datejust and a Submariner. When you see
Yeah,
all
yeah,
prices.
yeah.
Yeah, back then they sat in a shop. They weren't that popular, but for me, they are really the stylish. I'm all about the style and design of these things, not so much
Yeah.
about movement. I'm not a movement guy. For me, it always has to do something with me on my wrist and has to resonate. in aesthetics, and this for me still is the most beautiful watch that's ever made.
Yeah.
And after I got my first one, which was a big red Daytona, I had quite a few, even up to a tropical Fuerza del Peru that I really regret selling to Van der Porsche. That was shitty.
Yeah, you sold a really great Daytona and bought a really terrible Porsche. I remember that.
And that Porsche was really, I just returned it after I think 5 or 6 months because I was done with it. I thought I bought a good one, but yeah, I regret selling that watch forever because now a tropical Daytona would be just a dream with really like camel kind of eyes. But the interesting thing that I discovered over the years with the Daytonas, and you remember back then I also had like the Newmans, and back then I found like suddenly when you had the one Grail you wanted to go to the next level, and we discovered the Newmans and stuff like that. But the Newmans was fantastic, but in today's market for me the Newmans are just way out of line, and I wouldn't feel comfortable with it anymore. So now for me it's back to basics in a way. It's hard to tell basics for something like this these days, but it's for me it's still that Grail piece. And what I discovered over years that I like the ones without the big red Daytona, the earlier ones, way more than the later ones. Really personal. So even in the Daytona thing, you can still find, your own kind of way, your own kind of preferences, what kind of dial configurations you want or not. So I'm playing around with the bezels and just straps and bracelet, and I also have the oyster bracelet, changing the looks. Really enjoy that. What I like about the old ones, Ross, is for me the earlier 70s one. If you have Sigma dial, or if you have a nice black one with the silver print, which is beautiful, you have like almost like the surface feels different, it's warmer than I think the later ones. So the big red for me feel a little bit more harsh and poppy, and I like the little bit more connoisseur earlier ones, more balanced in my view. So
cool.
Yeah, I was really happy. Like a few years ago, I was in Parma and I found the bracelet, but especially with the rare end links, because these days has become a total hype. So find the 19mm end links, and this is really special to.
Wow.
To find you can wear it on a jubilee with the 74 end links, and they are hard to find these days. But it's I enjoy it really like this.
Yeah,
for me,
it's always been an incredibly important watch to you, and we'll talk about Bulang and Sons and that journey maybe later on. But I mean, I think it's important to contextualize your role in the kind of the emergence of vintage Rolex and its importance in terms of the collector's market, because back, before Bulang and Sons, you used to you created the Rolex Passion Meetings, which arguably were the first big scale get-togethers. And so, a lot of these watches that we're talking about were watches that back in the early days of the VRF and moving forward, you guys created that knowledge and were part of the forum that really established the understanding of how important these watches were.
Yeah, I mean, it's the interesting things on these times. Well, of course, I mean, I came in when there were already like big collectors and very knowledgeable people, dear friends already there that did it for already like 20 years. I think we all agree that the Italians, created the vintage Rolex love and market in a way. So I never would have that kind of credits. But what's interesting when I came into the market, for me, my origin is design and branding and stuff like this. For me, it was always storytelling was the part of it, and for me, it was always the interesting part of that watch as well. It never was technique or as I said, was aesthetics, but also very much the stories behind these watches that I discovered. Great watches when you talk often to original owners, or you found out stories, or sometimes military watches. There was always that feeling for me like, hey, these watches have seen a life. They have been on a wrist from someone for 20, 30, 40 years and enjoyed their, great moments, bad moments. For me, there was always the search also in vintage pieces to discover the beauty of aging, the beauty of where you can see sometimes his story. Sometimes, if a watch is mint, it's beautiful. But that kind of aging that you felt the mojo and the soul of the watch was for me always very important. So I always try to share that part of it. Back then, when often in forums there was still talks about, details and technical and it was more not nerdy, it's the wrong word, but it was more like focused on really collecting stuff. And I was always enthusiastic about the feeling that it gave me to wear a watch like this, to share that heritage that the watch had in it. And so, you know, of course, many of you know Philip Stahl and I, we met, we came in from the same town. So we started to walk that path together and discovering this whole world and started to write about it, shoot it, put it into studio, shoot it on the wrist, adding, you know, styles and all these kind of things to it. So back in these days, I think that was kind of a little bit more new back then. And we, you know, were very, very passionate about it, that we wrote so much and connected so many people. But what we discovered was like, hey, there are many great guys out there, and we all living behind a PC and talk about it every day. We are talking almost more to each other than to our wives, or at a certain period. But we never met. You know, there's no place where you could put all these watches on the table and really enjoy the details, compare them with each other, have them in the hand, try on a beautiful watch from someone else to understand if it's something for you or not for you, or what is behind it. So at the point it was like, hey, we are all in this community so much together, but actually we never meet. And there of course was also a group that would go to auctions and meet there, or watch fairs, but it was always sometimes more like a hunting, and we wanted something really relaxed where you could really share your passion, feel very secure, but also completely unpretentious. So it really was a completely relaxed thing. So we invited a group of, I think the first one was like 28, 29 people to join us in Maastricht, little town in the Netherlands, in a completely relaxed atmosphere outside in a chateau. And it was fantastic. You know, the watches were put on a table. You could touch anything. You could try it on. People would leave their watch box with Newmans, Millsaps, Comex, whatever kind of patent pending stuff was in there, and just grabbed lunch and said, hey, play with it. And I see it in half an hour. Enjoy it. You know, that kind of atmosphere and trust among each other was for me the biggest magic of all of this. So out of that sharing, then we took the pictures, of course, of this. We couldn't share the people, which for me was the most important part of this meetings, really the friendships and the enthusiasm of the people with each other. You really could, for 3 days, you know, could lose yourself in all of this without people saying you are mad or you're an idiot, because back then when you deal vintage Rolex, nobody in our environment would understand what you're really looking at or doing. You're talking for 1.5 hours about the underline, about the 2 millimeter line. Are you crazy? You know?
I remember that my first passion meeting, I think my first one, I think, was the first in Amsterdam, or maybe I've been to a couple at the chateau, but anyway, I remember having lunch on the day when, you know, all those watches on the table, and just kind of just wandering up, putting on a different watch, enjoying that one for 10 minutes. Watches that, you know, were kind of these mythical, iconic watches that most people had only ever seen on the internet, and all came together. And to see all of those watches on one table at the same time was, I think, a huge shift in terms of how collecting is viewed.
And what it made it all interesting, I think, Ross, is because now you see these days, you know, see so many experts online, but most of them, or many of them, are suddenly experts out of, you know, talking about images. And the interesting of the passion meeting was that when you had like 25 Newmans on the table, you could really compare them, you could really feel them, you know, look them, really touch them, go deep into the structure of the materials to understand them way more. But same goes with all kind of other watches. So for me, it was really different from only, you know, talking about watches from pictures, or having the ability to have, I mean, we had sometimes like 300, 400, 500 watches on the table. You know, like 35 big crowns or stuff like this. It was crazy times.
It was insane.
You couldn't imagine it these days. I mean, our friends in Asia do these crazy stuff sometimes. You know, last year New York was a blast, but still, you know, you had so many variety. A meeting with 35 Millsaps on the table, 33 hours. It's crazy. But then you can really not. It's about the prestige of the amount of the watches, but the really feel the watches. What did patina with them? You know, how are they serviced? What did it do with them? What is a normal state of a really used watch for this kind of dedication and everything? So the knowledge for me was also way interesting, that you really feel watches and really discover them live instead of thing. But the most important part of this was for me to discover the people behind these watches, and discover also the story behind these people, because, you know, often now you see yeah, someone is posting 2 Newmans or 3 Newmans, and then people are like, wow, and whatever. But they sometimes forget the hours and hours and hours spent to get there, starting first with one watch and third. And of course, you have people now, they say, oh, I buy my first vintage Rolex and I buy the Newman in auction, blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
That's part of it. But many of the friends we know, they have gone a path to get there where they are. And they have paid a lot of money, in lessons learned. They spend so much time in to get there. So it's also the stories behind this watch and understanding that it's just not buying something. It's really the whole path that gets you, that makes it so interesting. And meeting interesting people. And I think part of what you said, like, hey, you maybe been part of the whole thing that vintage has been growing, is yes, we shared them. We always found it important also to take the pictures, put them on forums in hours of work. If you look now what you had to do, upload photos into photo bucket, copy the links and all this, it was a 2-day job to just share the images of a meeting, which but then you saw all these people react to it and also starting to look into vintage that first were more in modern. They started to get interest in vintage and starting to, see also the stories behind it. I think that was a big part of maybe where vintage is now, that there's more and more people got enthusiastic by many people who did this, but yeah, partly, by the passion meetings, and I did later the blog where I shared it, but also sharing it on forums, on Instagram. And now it has become a very, very big thing, yeah, indeed.
Yeah. So sticking with the theme of vintage Rolex, let's look at the next. I know the next watch is very important to you. So let's talk about that.
Yeah,
well, important to both of us, but particularly.
Yeah, to both of us. Yeah, it's a watch that connects us.
Yeah.
I mean, as said, the Daytona was always my grail. Was always kind of a watch that I had always like this status for me, and I don't wear it so often. A lot of the time it's in the bank. The watch that always has been with me actually since the early days that I started collecting. And the funny thing is that it's also part of the watch is with me like for 14 years already, I think. Is my Maxi Mark 1.
Wow. Great watch.
Yeah.
Such a great watch.
Yeah, and for me, you have a few pictures. I send you.
Yeah, I'm going to go straight into it. I normally wait a little while, but I'm going to just share this one straight away. Here we go.
Yeah.
Just super cool.
And for me, the Submariner, of course, the 5513 is kind of always the key watch to my, not so much to the collection because it sounds too much, but it's to my collecting thing. Because whatever I will do, I will always have a 5513.
Yeah.
And preferably always have a Maxi Mark 1. For me, the Maxi Mark 1 is by far the nicest, let's say, normal 5513 matte dial.
Yeah.
I mean, there are beautiful gilt dials out there, but finding a real nice one these days is tremendous, and also big funds involved. There are many different 5513, depends on completely on their patina and everything, but the plots, the big plots of the Mark 1, and there are all kind of theories now, and Mark 3 and Mark 4, 5. When we started, you had a maxi dial or you had a normal dial.
Yeah, absolutely. There was none of the kind of
all these little things came up later when we looked at it, and we shared that with a big group of people. That knowledge came up also on the Vintage Rolex forum and other forums. But for me, always the Mark 1 with a Tropic 19, plexiglass on it. That was pure sex on the wrist for me. Every twist that you do, these markers start to dance, and they are so big. For me, still they are the biggest Rolex ever did. I know that people say like with the Mark III, because they are touching, they feel they are bigger, but I had enough of these watches next to each other for me feel still that the Mark 1 is the biggest. And whenever you put this watch on, you can do anything with it. You put anything to it, steel bracelet, NATO straps. I love to wear it on a NATO also. And
I think we've got a picture of that we can share.
Yeah, it gets that kind of tool watch vibe on a NATO strap, which is really, really cool. Gets a little bit that military look.
Yeah.
I love to, you just never can go wrong with a nice 5513. That's one part. But with a Mark 1, I had put it next to so many other 5513. It really blows them away anytime. So for me, this is really like not only one key watch that has followed me. I mean, this watch I now have, I think, like 5 or 6 years this sound. But before that, I always had like or either 5512 Maxi Mark One or other 5513s Max One, or even I tried a 1680 Maxi Mark One with the big same plots.
Yeah.
And then I took off the Cyclops Plexi and put it on also Tropical 19. It looked fabulous, like had that same kind of quality. And the nice thing with this one, you started about Bulang and Sons. Yes, I started the brand 2012. The website went live in 2013, and ever since, I think shortly after, this watch has become kind of a signature watch for us, because every strap we pull out, we shoot on this watch. This is with every shoot, with everything, this watch is always with us. So it's really kind of an important watch for me personally as a Submariner, because the design of the non-date sub for me is still the most timeless, greatest design ever put in a watch. In a way, there are watches that can temporarily itch me more, let's say, or give me more watch. And as said, that 62, 63, or 65 is really a grail to me. But back to basics, if I only would have the chance to own one watch, it would be that one.
Yeah, and I think it was important, wasn't it? Because when I think of the Bulang and Sons aesthetic, and obviously the brand has been going for 8 years now, but whenever I kind of, if I had to conjure up an image of Bulang and Sons in one picture, it would be the Mark 1 Maxi with one of the many straps and accessories that you've produced over the years.
Yeah, I mean, because this for me is the fun, the case, the design is so good. As I said, you can change your mood, you can change everything with it, and style it up to your mood you have that day. That's what I find so interesting. I still remember back those days on the forums. You had on a lot of forums was like, oh no, you have to wear your Rolex on that steel original bracelet, because otherwise it's not like a real Rolex. And I was like, why? You can do whatever you want to do with it. It's just for fun and whatever gives you your pleasure on the wrist. And for me, this watch really has become. And I think it's also like, we all have that Porsche 911 design, or Fender Stratocaster, these things. We have talked about it a lot. But there is something in these designs. I collected Eames chairs for many years, and all kind of design furniture. There was always something also with these old Eames designs from the 50s, and I had like lead chase I had, and the lounge chair we still have, and stuff like the allo chairs. It really always was like, you put it, even a design from back then, you put it in a room now, and it does something to the room. It adds just something up. It changes the aesthetics, the vibe of something. Even if you put it in a concrete modern environment, or put it in an old castle, it still holds up to it. And this is what I think what the 5513 Submariner design really had. It's really that good and so timeless. So, and I'm we had a lot of discussions over the years also about Baselworld.
Yeah.
How is the evolving of the Submariner? What is Rolex doing, and why can't they do this or can't do that? And in the beginning, I was kind of part of that theme, like, no, they should do this, and go all these kind of ways because we find it interesting, or redo stuff. And what I've always respected, and this is also, I think, what you see now in the quality of the design of the things of the Submariner, even up till today, as we talked, they are kind of a tanker that follows a course, a steady course. And it and this is also why the watches are still so valuable and recognizable, and because they never try to get funky with it, or just pure for marketing start to put all kind of features on it. It's a steady line, just like a 911, which has that same kind of quality and stuff. So for me, the 5513 certainly is one of the most key watches to my collecting pleasure. And you remember, just before Corona hit, we started a little initiative, No Date Sub Club. Also,
I was going to talk about
celebrate. That. Yeah, just we will do more with it in the future again, when we can, focus again on new things. Business became so busy the last months that I had to focus back again on getting all the things at Bulang and Sons, not running, but keep up with everything. But yeah, I'm really, for the future, I really want to do more with this and really celebrate the No Date Submariner, and try to find a knowledge base, share all these images and passion and love for those watches, because they really deserve it.
It's a pretty neat segue then into watch 3, talking about no date subs, and we this next watch is Incredible. Over to
Yeah,
you.
yeah. You know what the I find it, even after like 14 years or 15 years of collecting, I started to get more and more and more respect for this watch. So it really started to grow and grow on me. Actually, the funny thing is, my first sports Rolex was a small crown, back then. And back then, in those days, you could buy them, of course, for completely different monies than these days.
Yeah.
I think you could buy them, still find them on fairs easily for like 6, 7, 8,000 euros, nice ones and stuff. So my first one was a 6536 four-liner even, and I had no clue how rare it was back then.
Yeah.
I bought it in a shop, and it really started, my whole collecting thing. After that, I wanted a 5530, and then went on like almost like crazy. Maybe sometimes a little bit too crazy, but in those years, I bought a few nice small crowns, tropical ones, all these kind of things, because they always had this kind of quality. But I really liked the size, but also we called them James Bond back then, where we know, the James Bond, real James Bond, of course, the big crown, but they still called kind of a James Bond watch and stuff.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed also the bracelet, that they were thinner, the cases pop up by this more. And I had a few of them, and then I think till the point that I really went up in my collecting craziness, that I bought my first big crown. Then once you had the big crown on the wrist back then, it was like, yeah, goodbye small crown, because the big crown is so much cooler and has more depth and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it really was like, I never looked back at small crowns for, 10 years, 9 years or something like this. Enjoyed them, saw them on meetings, beautiful watches, but hey, I had the big crown, and then it was the thing. Till a few years ago, I think it was 3 years ago, I started to look at them again, and I was able to find a nice one. This one, a 5508.
Stunning.
Full gloss, and yeah, the light is bad today here, but it even turning brown when it really hits the sun.
Wow. Let me do a screen share.
It has this more greenish loom.
Yeah, okay. You sent me a stunning picture. I'm a real fan of the oyster rivet bracelet.
Yeah.
And
it's one of the part it's one part of the things that I really liked about these old Submariners, that they had the thinner bracelets, so the case would pop up more towards the design than in these days, or even like the 80s and later 70s with the thicker bracelets. It became more like a complete thing. The watch and bracelet went into one thing, and back then you really had the case pop versus the bracelet, and they were much more comfortable, in my opinion. So for me, I bought that 5508, really enjoyed it, and funny enough, the last year or two, I really, really, really love it more. I wear it quite a lot, even, to be honest. I wear it now on a super comfortable leather strap.
You sent me a picture of that. Let me show.
Yeah, because it sits so nice on the wrist. It's so elegant at the same time. Where the Submariner really, is also still big on your wrist. This one feels so comfortable and one with your wrist. And has all these quality, this adventurous thing from the past. So what I really, really like about these days is the proportion. And what I really like about wearing this one is that I can go back to kind of a stealth mode with wearing watches.
Yes.
With vintage watches having gained so much popularity over the last years. If you wear a Daytona on the street, people will look at you. If you wear a Submariner, people will look at you. Not like back in those days, people would say like, oh, he has an old watch. I don't care.
Yeah.
And the 5508 for me gives me that little bit that stealth that I can wear, without anyone else noticing, because I wear it for myself, not for anyone else. But I also think the case is so balanced and so nice in proportions. So really, one day I was like, oh yeah, no, the big crown is more interesting than the small crown. And these days I find small crowns so interesting, and way more all these different patinas and how they look, when you get the earlier ones with warmer loom and sometimes big red triangle insert, the later ones with a little bit more greenish, the different glosses. It's really, also a valuable watch these days. So it has gained some status over the years, recognition. But for me, this is really such a stylish piece.
It's so cool. I mean, I think it's one of those watches, isn't it, that's been a kind of a slow grow. And then last year at Philips, that new old stock
Oh,
example,
that's crazy.
it sold for something like $500,000 for a
Yeah,
big crown. I remember talking to you after because I was in Geneva for the sale. I remember talking to you the following week, going like, "This is insane. This
was
is
insane. It was insane. I have no clue why, and haven't seen the watch live, but it was really like, whoa, what's going on?
Yeah, it was incredible. Yeah.
You know, and also the fear, to be honest, that the small crown would do that next step where it's at a certain point is out of the reach for so many people, which would be a pity. Which would be a pity. I mean, they're valuable, but they're still reasonable. Yeah, I mean, the craziness is what is reasonable. Prices of these now is like what big crowns costed like 10, 12 years ago, maybe a little bit less than that. But but it's the same with the Daytona. So you now pay for Daytona what you pay for a really nice human 8 years or 7 years ago. So it just has shifted, and these are really grail pieces also still. But the interesting thing is, what I find an interesting question for myself with these kind of pieces now, when they are still getting more expensive, it becomes more difficult, because I've seen so many of these that really had like great mojo, great character, these watches that weren't mint. The dial often had like some life in it, or when they sometimes get tropical, the dial gets a little, not that full gloss tropical brown, but gets a little bit more life in it. You know what I mean? Patina.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which looked stunning, which really was like a very, very interesting watch. And the last years it has switched a little bit, like, but then I don't take it because it's not perfect. And then when I have to resell it, and also when you look at it, just pure, objective, it would have been a really, really beautiful piece and had a lot of, if you would wear it. I mean, we have all owned them. Also these kind of watches back then that are, lume wasn't perfect, the dial wasn't perfect, but it was just a pleasure on the wrist. And now these days you get a little bit like, I'm not sure. And that's something, I think, I still wish that you can just enjoy these kind of watches for what they are, truly, aged vintage watches with all this charisma and mojo on the wrist that you can really be proud of, without having that, second thought sometimes, like, is it good enough for the next one, or is it good enough for this? So, I mean, that's the difficulty, maybe a little bit of what price changes that have gone over the last years, is that we look at the watches differently, like maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And we enjoyed it very much back then in that direction. And I hope still that people are enjoying also watches like this, or 5530, and even if there's a replacement inlay on it, or the bracelet has been replaced, the dials have been nice, but it's we both know it's a true history of aging of a vintage watch. If you go to Rolex service, sometimes an inlay get changed. Is it by that now a bad watch? No, absolutely not. It's still a beautiful vintage piece. And just enjoy it. It's a different value, of course, but it's still a beautiful piece. So the 5508, it has also that kind of old time, or that vintage feel, that kind of 50s, 60s vibe to it.
Early days of dive watches.
The early days
of pure essence of the form, isn't it? The no crown guards. So
it's very essence. It's very pure. So that's what I like so much about it. That's why I also wear it now on that black strap with that dark dial, a little bit more dark. It feels almost like dark night sometimes.
Cool.
I really, really enjoyed it much.
So from like the real, and I think it's a really true thing to say, from a real kind of hardcore Rolex, vintage Rolex position, you then surprised us all with a kind of a total change of direction to watches that, are, I mean, honestly, in these video series, we have touched on this. The rise of the next brand has been meteoric, and the watches are incredible, and it's a whole new direction, and I can't wait to talk about this with you.
I mean, the nice thing is the new direction, is for me also a trip and a new discovery. So that's the interesting part, it's just so exciting. That's the great thing of it. As you said, being in that vintage Rolex for like the last 14, 15 years, and long years, only hardcore, only doing vintage Rolex, nothing else. Occasionally,
mono brand.
We did some Tudor with it. The key pieces from Tudor, but also some really, really nice Speedmasters, like the early ones to 998 and stuff like that, which always always was sitting in my watch box, but it was always Rolex mainly focused. And now with also the brand going, and we are getting so many watches also in and out, I always have Rolex around me. I have the pieces that I want to own. There's still maybe 1 or 2 pieces on my mind if I wanted to buy a really Rolex again, a really nice 6234, pre-Daytona.
Yeah.
That would be still something that I would be really excited about, because it has that oyster case and that complexity and elegance in the dial. That friction is really interesting.
Yeah.
But the last years I was always looking like what next to Rolex I could also find to keep on moving on, because once you always stick only into one theme, mono theme into it, it's great. But at a certain point, for my nature, I always need to discover new stuff to keep me, moving forward. Because also in with Bulang and Sons, finding different watches or different aesthetics also helps us to develop new styles for other stuff or finding other things.
Yeah.
So it should always be, evolving and moving forward. And you have seen that route over the years where I tried to discover all these step case chronographs, a couple of years back. And for a period of time, I was very deep into them, and I just really loved them. Really such nice case shapes in for the chronographs with the step case, Longines, but also all these other brands that use these kind of cases back then. Then we had like the Overtoners we went in. A little bit, which are beautiful watches, really amazing pieces, where you could still find certain pieces, not at that, gray level thing. It was still a little bit underrated, and still not everyone was running around with one. We had the dress watches, the big one, jumbo dress watches, Omega. Also, I had one from Rolex and stuff, 37, 38 millimeters, which is very, very exciting. Also, not so much known. And I think one of the people who inspired me to always keep looking for this stuff is also on these watch meetings. And last year, the October meeting in New York, the Raleigh Fest, our friend Jeff organized, was really, also a key point for me to really, address this for me and really search for different aesthetics and new things and new styles. Because there was always, John Goldberger was always on the meetings.
Yeah.
Dear friend now for over, also all these years. He was also with the fashion meetings always. And always, every time when we had that meeting, he was just sitting there and relaxed. And suddenly he was lifting his arm, and you saw the most, crazy watch on his wrist that you didn't expect.
Yeah.
He always brought something that was really refreshing and something different. And that always was for me like, wow, that's why I want to do a meeting like this. Not at a certain point because I wanted to see another 20 Newmans or another, the same table shots again. But always in this meeting, you would find 2 or 3 pieces that would really inspire you to look at it in a different way and to find really new forward, to find new kind of watches. And in October, he had a crazy minute repeater on and completely different aesthetics. And from then I started to look more and more to different brands, Movado and all these kind of things, and also Cartier. I had owned the Cartier like for the last 1.5 years, Basculante, which really is a cool watch.
Yes.
Really, really nice, because what I also like is that it was the automatic, so it had a little bit, the manual wind. It had a little bit bigger case size. So that's I started to look at the Cartiers like the last year, and I always found them a little bit small and everything for my personal taste. Till I started to find the bigger pieces and went deeper and found some. Yeah, really. The strange thing is, like 2 or 3 years ago, I wouldn't have touched Cartier. It wasn't just not for me. I could respect certain things of it, but the last, I think, since October, I really started a little Cartier collection.
Yeah, I'm going to share some pictures. Let's talk about this one first, because this is a cool watch, the Santos.
Yeah. It became my I think 3rd Cartier. What I like about the watch is that it's not a prestige watch in our world. I think you can get them somewhere around 2.5 or 2.7 euro. Steel, automatic movement. And for many years, I looked at these watches and was like, nah, not for me. It's 280 or it's too. I was always looking for 60s watches, 50s watches.
Yeah.
70 was already like, the Daytona or Submariner, but all the the round 70 shapers from Hoyer and stuff wasn't so much for me.
No.
And then came this, and somehow that gives me that Miami Vice feeling. I don't know.
Yes.
It has that kind of flashy
Wall Street.
yeah, Wall Street flashy kind of thing. You know, like a guilty pleasure kind of watch, in a way. Yeah. But at the same time, the case shape is really beautiful. You know, if you look at the details, if you look what Cartier does with all these designs and shapes and you know, aesthetics and proportions, it's absolutely fabulous. You know, to be honest, I know nothing about movements from these Cartiers. I couldn't care less for myself. You know, of course, when we sell something, we do all the research. But for myself, it's all about the aesthetics of these watches, and certainly with these Cartiers. What they do with me when I put them on the wrist. What I can dive in from this kind of 80s vibe with my clothing or with my style to something completely different when it suddenly becomes really, really classy or classic. So it's this watch for me really is kind of a surprise. I wear them loose, you know, put some bracelets next to it or little things, or just this would be my summer watch, I guess, when I go to the beach. I would bring this one with me. Just you know, unpretentious fun, and a lot of style in it. So that's really for me the cool thing. What I really like about all these Cartiers is, for me, it's really like a big discovery. You know, when you have the book, the Gentleman's files, and you look, when I look on Instagram now on all these the Cartier archives and stuff, they inspire me also with all these different shapes, which are really actually very rare. You know, you look at what you say like, oh wow, I also want one, and then suddenly it's like likely not to happen.
You just can't find them. I mean, look, you've sent a picture of these two as well. Just talk me through this pair, because again, it's a classic look, isn't it? They're so different to the Santos and the other watches, but there's obviously a design.
Absolutely. But the really interesting thing for me about this is the left one is the Jumbo Tank Automatique from the 70s. Which for me was my after the Basculant was my first real Cartier. I bought it from a friend, and once he had it on his wrist, we had like this little watch dinners with friends once a week. And he was wearing it and was like, it itched me, you know, it was really like, wow, I need this watch. It really was so exciting because the size is big. You know, normally, as we said, the Cartiers are very, very small. But this one, I don't know out of my head, but I think it's somewhere about 27 or 28 by 30 something. So it's really the jumbo. And on the wrist, it's really big. So it has... I
think we've got a picture of this one on its own, actually, as well, haven't we? Here.
I think so, yeah.
There we go. Yeah, super.
So it's that all that classic Cartier look. I wear it now with an old style lizard strap. Which I mean, I like to wear it with, you know, outfit I have like on like this. It has that kind of strange friction, because normally you would expect like a suit or anything with this kind of watch, the really classy thing. And I enjoying just wearing it with some sneakers and military stuff and all. And that's for me kind of the theme in this Cartier thing, is that looking for that friction, because I would have never thought of myself as a Cartier guy.
No, absolutely.
And now to be honest, I'm wearing them most of the time. Because it's such an exciting thing to put it on and feel what it really does to me, and the kind of resonates on my wrist with everything I do. So it's really exciting. And also what is really nice about this watch is, you know, on the back they have that little bubble to hold the automatic movement.
Oh yeah, okay.
So it's also just a nice detail, you know, you wouldn't expect. But it makes also, it takes care that it sits a little bit higher on the wrist, so it's not really a small piece. My colleague in the office, Giacomo, he was wearing Cartier already before me. He was already discovering them. He had some smaller pieces that were just a little too small for me. But when I found this one, this one I think will be also really a keeper, because it's just the perfect balance for me in size and so comfortable to wear. So for me, it's really beautiful. The other one,
this one, I'm going to share. We've got an individual picture of this. The case is outstanding, isn't it?
For me, this one is kind of a surprise of earlier this year. I was on the watch fair in Munich, and I was indeed was there running around and also looking for some stranger, as I said, inspired by John Goldberger, trying to find something that is really a little bit out of the ordinary. When I put it on the wrist, that it's really some funky thing.
Yeah.
And I saw this one, and I knew immediately I need to have it. It's a crystal ore. It's also quite a big size for Cartier. It's a manual wind, and I think it's one of the not so popular models from their lineup over the years and everything. But maybe that's something that's what attracts me to it. When most people might not find it the most popular one, then I find it very popular.
Yeah.
And it's so not me in a way over the last year, because I think when I picked it up, you would have said like, "Ben, what are you doing?"
Yeah, no, I think I did say that when you picked that up. I think you sent me a picture of it from the fair, and I was like, dude, what's happened to you? We need to have a coffee and look at some oyster cases, mate.
Yeah, what did you smoke? But it's so cool on the wrist.
Yeah.
It feels, it's kind of my Italian watch, let's say.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. It feels like, it feels so cool on the wrist to wear it. I even wear it. I first wanted to put on a new strap, which is not easy. It's a special strap from Cartier. You have to get the shape. This is a really old strap that has all these marks in it, and beaten up crocodile. But
cool.
It's so soft and flexible. So I'm wearing on it, and I'm not sure I want to change it for very soon, because it has that kind of I don't give a fuck kind of
yeah.
Which I really love with it.
Yeah.
So if this wear it for me is really like it's the watch that is breaking up with everything that I ever believed I would do. I'm not an Art Deco guy. I don't have Art Deco interior, so I always was that design classics and maybe 50 kind of aesthetics. But this one is really cool to me. It's
so good.
And there are so many cool shapes from Cartier. When you look at these kind of things, the gondole, which have become expensive. I saw lately with a friend, he had like white gold, which was like, wow, the big one, really big one, like guys, which are really, really cool. But they are now already in a price league where I say, like, I don't know if this is for me. But this was still, super cool find, where you maybe have a watch that is around 4,500 euros, where you can really... 18 karat gold, where you can really have a lot of fun without breaking the bank. Yeah.
So talking about interesting shapes and fascinating watches, I'm going to just go straight into this amazing picture that you sent me. I mean, look at that. This is cool. And a benchmark moment for you in terms of metals.
Yeah, it's my first platinum watch. I never owned a platinum watch. I had white gold and yellow golds. Not so many in the past, yellow gold, mainly steel. So this one was my first platinum. Now I'm a serious guy now, I'm grown up.
Yeah, you've reached platinum status.
I reached platinum, yeah. But what for me was the most interesting in this, I have seen that model over the last 1.5 years when I was looking. And I was always like, I'm not sure. Maybe it's a little bit too, now I'm really getting like a Chesterfield or something, and I need to get old and in a way. So it was maybe too classic for me, but a friend of mine digged this one out, and I showed it to me, and it was for me, it was like, yes, I need it.
Yeah.
It's really such a funky shape and great size, because it's not really that small one. It's one, I think, out of the 90s. I have it for a few days now, to be honest. So I haven't done all the research and things. But imagine this design is like it's 114 years old. This design is from 1906.
Yeah.
So it's really, and I'm spoiling immediately that I wear it different these days.
Yeah, I was just going to come on to that. I mean, I'll share that now, because obviously in line with what you do.
If you can go back to the other picture, is that okay?
This one. Yeah.
The first one?
Yeah.
Because there you see the full glory of that watch in a way. Yeah. It has that complicated dial with all, the typical Cartier elements in it. The shape is beautiful balance. I mean, really, I think Cartier does, when you look also, I see now the four watches in front of me, the shapes and the balance in design, the aesthetics and the proportions are just all perfect. It's crazy. So I'm totally in love with these kind of pieces now. With this one, what a lot of the early ones and up to this model, often sometimes I think the critic was that the bracelet is too thin for the proportion of the watch. It has that. It's also called the dandy watch, maybe by that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But I find it really the challenge to just also wear it like that, because it, you know, if you can pull off this, you can pull off anything in a way.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know?
yeah.
You know, wear it like you want to. I'm not so, you know, strict to rules. I rather break the rules or play with
Always
them.
break the
Yeah.
rules. Yeah.
Yeah, but it has that kind of proportion with the thinner strap that really, where we normally would say, oh, it fits with a really elegant guy, you know, in a suit and in really nice shirt. Now I don't wear shirts and stuff like, you know, it gives all these kind of feeling to it.
Yeah.
And for me, there was really the search. Like when I got it, yes, it's great, and I have been wearing it for 2 or 3 days with the thin strap, and somehow that felt a little bit less comfortable because it's a thinner strap on a platinum, a little bit more heavier watch. So I like a little bit more heavy. And I was thinking, what else can I do with it that it brings it really into my world? And yeah, I guess you have then that next picture where it shows a little bit where I try to wear it with.
This is cool. I mean, this could almost like sum Bulangandsons up in so many ways, and well, sum you up, and therefore the Bulangandsons aesthetic, because even like, you know, you've totally changed up how you're wearing the watch, and then it's kind of what you're wearing it with. I mean, that cool kind of industrial look of the jacket with,
it's an old miner's jacket.
Yeah, miner's jacket. Yeah. With then the cuff, and then with this very delicate platinum Cartier. You have a phrase for that, don't you? That pleasant
it's kind of a pleasant friction. Yeah. For me, it's always the search in what we do, kind of a pleasant friction. For me, it's, you know, if sometimes you really find the balance where it's something supposed to be, and it's the same, like, you know, you put it on top of each other and it's nice, it's fine, it's good like this. But sometimes then it gets boring for me. For me, it's always the search, how can I combine certain things that when they interact with each other, it creates something new, it becomes something different. And for me, it was wearing the watch with that cuff. I took off a Newman strap that we do and had. Suddenly, it became a completely different watch.
Yeah.
It became more of a statement than it became like an, you know, very refined connoisseur, understated piece you had on your wrist. It suddenly became more like a fashion thing for me. So I really enjoyed with that, and I will mix and match and flip and flop with it all the time. But it's, this one has been on the wrist for the last days for me, and I really, really enjoy it. And also, you know, if you look at the shape also from the sides,
it's great, isn't it? Wow, look at the crystal! Wow.
Yeah, the crystal has that shape also. You know, you see. So it's
cool.
It's really so cool designed, and it really, you know, I really still remember a few years ago, I was sitting in a hotel in Geneva shooting a collection from a friend with some plans back then to maybe do a book. And he had a Cartier, something like that. I don't know exactly more, but it had also, you know, the crown and all these little details in the dial, and it was like really close up. And back then already was like, wow, you know, it isn't my style. But when you look into detail on how much detail is on the dial eventually, it was really beautiful. You know, it really already then was like, wow, one day I have to discover more about it. Yeah. Cool. So now I'm a Cartier collector personally.
The king of Cartier.
I don't know. To be honest, the fair word is if you know, we never started it. There are so many people who are doing this already for the last year. Now Cartier is becoming more and more popular. The last year, some dealers pick it up and try to make it big now and everything. I try to keep it a little bit low profile still, so I can still find some pieces at reasonable prices.
Yeah, don't build it up too much because you still want to enjoy collecting them.
Because there are so cool things out there, also from different brands. But you know, the honor to the people that are, you know, they're also like people like Eric Koo and others, and certainly John Goldberger, who you know, collected these pieces already like 20 years ago and already saw the beauty of these way before we did. And it's now great that you see like you know, people on Instagram and you know, writing book that are putting out way more information about these kind of watches and the brand. Because for me, the brand and the watches and also wasn't even, you know, till maybe a year ago was a complete darkness, but also was, if you would Google for information, it would be very hard. You know, with vintage Rolex, you could find a lot of things. With this, it was very hard to really move forward. So yeah, at the moment Cartier is my venom,
Awesome.
and yeah, try to find some existing things for.
Cool. So we've had a great journey here through some of the most iconic vintage Rolex and finish with some fantastic Cartiers. We also like to talk about a book. So if you were going to spend some time, well, you're currently spending time with me, but what would your desert island book be?
I was thinking of the book because I told you once before. I'm not, I'm not reading all these books. I'm a visual guy. I've always been a designer, so for me the visual thing is more. So I'm not reading reader. What would be really interesting if I would go now to an island, I would really take this book. I have been starting reading it a while ago, and it might be a surprise for you. It's a Porsche book. It's called The Ultimate Sports Car as Cultural Icon.
Wow. Okay.
And what is interesting about this book, we had it in the shop, and I was really astonished with it. With really cool, cool images of Porsches in the 70s and stuff like that.
Wow, super.
But it's a book also about the culture and all. How was it designed? What was in the development? But also owners, stories from owners. And a kind of a historical aspect and cultural aspect to it, towards the style, to certain cars and models in the period of time. And why do I also want to show you this book? For me is how great would it be if some book of this like this would be there for the Rolex Submariner.
Yeah.
What I find, it maybe it's one of my ambitions for the future or something, to find the time to really write down this, the cultural aspect of an iconic watch like that.
Yeah.
Maybe something in our No Date Sub Club, we will do this or something at a certain point. As I said, this is just like stories about a guy, the first time he was sitting on a Porsche or whatever he experienced. Design studies, how fantastic would it be if maybe even, let's dream, and we are on an island, Rolex would participate and would say, I really write down the thing, if we could find some kind of design sketches from the
that'd be amazing.
Or prototypes or anything, and you could really, just like with Porsche does with this 911, you put in the heritage not only in there but also the stories of the people. I had a talk with a dear friend about like mill subs a while ago in the beginning of this year, who is really deep into the mill subs and also has met a lot of the original owners. And my fear for our watch hobby is that a lot of these stories just get lost. Because collectors who are in this for a long time now, maybe also with all the biting and bitting sometimes on the Instagram and stuff, they rather shut up, or they keep more for themselves, which is a pity. But wouldn't it be great to have a really great book to honor that timeless classic watch, where you could put all these kind of stories? How are these watches used as a tool watch? How are these things develop? What really comics divers did with these watches, to understand, even if you buy a Submariner today, what kind of DNA really is in there. But also people who have maybe enjoyed their watch for 60 years. And so for me, a book like this, I really want, I'm going to read, but also it would be a really great start to maybe do this for Rolex and 553.
Well, we heard it here first. The No Date Sub Club book coming soon.
Well, who knows?
To a bookshelf near you, to a desert island near you soon.
I think I need 2 years on a desert island to get in this project.
Well, Bernhard, thank you so much for joining us. I've got a couple of jumbo shrimp that I've got ready to go on the barbie. So let's grab our drinks, grab the watches and our book, and then we'll go and enjoy that. And thanks for coming to the island.
See you soon.
Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.